Welcome, everyone. We are about to start our first live session of the Social Entrepreneurship for Innovations in Health course. Before we start, we're going to wait for a few seconds to let participants join us by refreshing their screen. And while we're waiting, I would like to remind participants that in order for you to receive your certificate, you need to earn 100 points. And while watching a live webinar, you can receive 4 points. So in order to do that, please just scroll down and click yes to the survey, and you will receive those points. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to our 18th version of the Social Entrepreneurship for Innovations in Health course. This course is part of the Making More Health initiative, a partnership between Ashoka and Boehringer Ingelheim. The Making More Health initiative explores innovative pathways to improve access to healthcare for people, animals, and communities around the world. And in this course, participants connect with a global network of healthcare professionals from across the private, public, and nonprofit sectors, and convene to learn entrepreneurial strategies to create social and business impact in the health and wellness spaces. My name is Natalie Zuniga, and I'm going to be your facilitator of this live webinar. This webinar will cover the module 1 of the course, which is the business case for social entrepreneurship. And to cover this topic, I have here with me fabulous Florencia Estrade. Florencia is the executive director and the co-founder of the League of Entrepreneurs. The League is an international community of impact innovators inside some of our most influential private and public institutions. Florencia is passionate about people finding meaning at work and collective leadership. She spent over a decade working inside large corporations in Latin America and the US, like ABN AMRO Bank, McKinsey & Company. And she also founded social enterprises in Brazil, an impact-based innovation consultancy and an accelerator for impact-driven startups. Florencia holds an MBA from UC Berkeley, and she's a Fulbright scholar and Haas Merit Scholar. Florencia, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here today one more time.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. We were just, as we were preparing, just saying it's so beautiful to see the consistency of this program over so many years. So 18th edition, it's such a pleasure. And yeah, I hope I can bring a little bit of my experience with so many years looking into entrepreneurship and invite more of you to join the journey.
Totally. Thank you so much for joining us today. And to begin, I would love to hear if you can share with our audience a little bit about your professional journey as a social entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur, which is really interesting that you're both. So if you can just share with us for a few minutes.
Well, yeah, I always laugh when people introduce you with the bio. So let me tell you.
It's a very impressive bio.
Because I was just like, let me explain a little bit of my story and how I ended up here. I started working very early on with 19 years old inside the corporate world while I was still studying. Born in Uruguay, so I started there, and I have to say I was privileged to have the chance to work with people that were quite open to me in terms of I was always asking lots of questions and always wondering about why are things done the way they are. Particularly in my case, working in a bank, which was my first job, I was very much looking into all the time speaking about money, but money for what? And I was very interested in how we could create new things or do it differently. So I guess at that time, I didn't have the language to call myself an entrepreneur, but I was certainly already taking that behavior of asking what if we could do it differently, what if we could do a product that thinks differently about. So we did like credit for university students. And then I remember the first internet banking that we were launching in Uruguay. So lots of fun projects bringing people together. But still, for me, in that phase of my life, I have to say that social impact and business were quite not integrated. Although I think a lot of my questions had to do with that, I was still not being able to live it. Aha moment in my life, 2002. I'm studying business at Berkeley, super thankful for having done it there in that university, and started learning around social enterprises, social return on investment, and that integration between business and social impact. And for me, it was like, of course, like the limitation on thinking of business just for the financial return has been taught to us. And that is how we learned to run it. But actually, the essence of business should consider and does consider the value you bring to society. And we just kind of lost the balance, I feel. So, and started just looking at one indicator. But in essence, so for me, that was a big moment 20 years ago where I started really channeling my career into, I want to work with business and impact. So look at how business can be a force for social impact and environmental impact, positive impact in the world. Yeah. My experience of that was still went to work with McKinsey, so the big consultancy. How are you going to do it? But I was just like, so when I entered McKinsey, I was already with that agenda. So I think that's important, the intention you have while working inside an organization. So I had much more clarity on what I wanted to do and what was that I wanted to bring in. And with that, even I spent there some years working in creating the new social sector office, working in supporting Ashoka social entrepreneurs. There was already a partnership between McKinsey and Ashoka in terms of how can we support social entrepreneurs to scale and to grow and to be more sustainable financially.
Which year were you working at McKinsey? Which years?
It was 2005 to 2008. And I was in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and then went to Washington. So, but that was still there. And I have to say, for me, that was wonderful, because the possibility of you being sitting in a large organization with lots of resources and connecting with incredible entrepreneurs that have vision, have ideas, have lots of power on how to change things, but little resources. So that potential of connection is incredible. So for me, that's part of being an intrapreneur, is not only creating new things inside an existing institution, but actually being able to bridge with the external ecosystem and identifying entrepreneurs that could be connected and given the chance for much more resources and scale. So I was still there, but I have to say personally, for me, there was a moment that I needed to leave McKinsey. I have to say that was very much intrinsic, because for me personally, I felt the need to have more space for creation. But I went outside, started a company that was certainly a social enterprise. And what we did consultancy for large corporations on how you can think about impact from an innovation perspective. And then with the money we made in the consultancy, we invested in an accelerator for startups where we invested in new companies that were starting with social impact perspective. So that is where we were channeling and bridging these two worlds, the corporations and the social entrepreneurs. But it was then in 2013 that I actually learned about the term intrapreneur. And the League of Entrepreneurs had launched a competition. It was Ashoka being a partner launching this competition. And then I was like, this is awesome. This is what we need to do. Let's work with the intrapreneurs, because my dilemma or difficulty in all this process of connecting the large organizations with the small entrepreneurs was, who is the right person inside the organization. So it was not the area, it was the right person that has the mindset, has the vision, has the openness for this capacity to think beyond and think about what could be possible. And then was when I connected with some people that have started the competition. And I was like, but we need to build a community, because what I do here in Brazil is we bring people together and we share and we learn. So I ended up becoming a co-creator and become part of the leadership team of the League of Entrepreneurs. And I have to say, just one more thing to add in my aha moments in this process. I realized that a big barrier why we're not doing more of this is our capacity to imagine and to lead the change. So it was less about the frameworks and the business models, but actually who is able to lead this transition and this change. And that's why I'm so passionate about the concept of intrapreneurship as a way to give a name to what is that role, and to really go deeper into what are the capacities, the competencies that you need to develop to make that happen. And I'm going to stop here, but there's an importance in terms of the leadership required to make this transition.
Totally. And I love what you said about like, it's so important to actually have basically the vision to be able to see something different, right? Like to have that capacity to just envision what's going to happen, and then build the skills and build the strength, I guess, courage to to speak out loud and to make it happen. And to lay the foundations of this interview, and especially because we are in module 1 of the course, I would love to hear from you, and based in your experience, what social entrepreneurship means to you, and what is the difference between a social entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur. We were already mentioning, but I just want to make sure that we have like very clear understanding on these concepts.
So I'm going to bring 2 different perspectives. One is from the theory of change perspective. Why am I so passionate about entrepreneurship and dedicating so much energy to it? If we think how systems change and how things happen in society as we transition, normally you will start innovating in the margins of a system. So you will have, like, let's take the case of education. You will have new schools, completely innovative, doing something that sometimes it's not even approved by the ministries of education, but it's happening on the margins. And that is so important because it inspires. It serves as a way of what can be possible. But those entrepreneurs that are starting those new initiatives won't shift the whole system. You need to bring also the existing institutions, the powerful, influential institutions, to also shift and bring these new perspectives. So that is when it comes the time of intrapreneurs, which is you are working inside an existing organization. There's already a machine working. It has brand, it has distribution, it has money, it has influence, it has all these assets. And then how can you innovate from within it in order to make the transition to bigger scale? So if we think of it from a systems perspective, we are investing as a theory of change in those people that are working inside institutions that will need to shift in the transition. And therefore, that's why we know, just to give some statistics, 70% of the natural resources of our planet are in the value chains of 400 companies.
Really? Wow.
So, there's a concentration of power. We know that. There's a concentration of power. So if you twist a little bit of those value chains, you're making a big shift in the system. Now, when it comes to the definition of what is an entrepreneur versus an intrapreneur and the differences, well, an entrepreneur is creating a new service, new product that can, in the case of a social entrepreneur, can impact positively the livelihoods of people and the planet. While when we think of a social entrepreneur, is behaving as an entrepreneur inside an existing organization. So doing the same, but inside an existing infrastructure. And what that brings is you have a very similar spirit. I always like to say the shiny eyes for me define the entrepreneurial spirit, because it's that thing that you're saying, you see things, you view things, you're in love with what you want to create. Now the journey is very different, because if you are an entrepreneur, you are actually using probably your money. You don't have a salary. You are risking lots of things, and you are creating with a bunch of other people that believe in the same things that you do. And you probably go and sell your idea to many people. And there are thousands of people you can sell it to, because it's full of people in the world. When you're an entrepreneur, you are sitting inside an organization. You have a job description already, which probably says what you need to do with your time inside that organization. And now you want to create something that maybe has a link with your job description, or maybe you are just dedicating extra time. So you need to do your job and then have time to do this new idea, this new baby that you want to create. And then what you need to do from the beginning is to make sure you understand how to make time for this idea. You have a salary. You're not risking. So let's be realistic. You're not putting your financial resources. You have the comfort of a salary, but you have the discomfort of not having the full ownership of your time. So you need, your key resource is time to be dedicated. And then you want to bring others along, and the others that you want to bring along are not everyone in the world, but you actually know you have to convince some key people in the organization to back up your idea. And last but not least, it cannot be your idea. So that's very important. For an entrepreneur, it can have your name. Well, when entrepreneurs grow, they learn that in order to scale, you need to leave a little bit your name and start bringing teams and people that own it as well. But for an entrepreneur, that's fundamental since day one. It cannot be your idea. It has to be built with a group so that it can be institutionalized as early as it can, because a lot of people feel it's their own.
Totally, totally. Thank you so much for laying down the foundations of what is social entrepreneur versus social entrepreneur, and how they have points that they convene in terms of like the spirit and the motivation and the passion of like wanting to create change, but it's a different journey. Being owner of your own business in a way as a social entrepreneur would be, while working for a bigger organization, having the resources, having different constraints, time constraints, basically. And I guess like what you were just saying, like you're not the owner of the innovative idea. And I know that this week is the Global Entrepreneur Week that is launched by the League of Entrepreneurs. So I would love if you can tell us a little bit more about this super amazing event that is happening right now. And I know you already had like online sessions, and you're going to be having some in-person meetups throughout the week. So maybe even some of the people that are watching us now are part of those countries and can apply and be part of those in-person meetups. Can you please?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a first edition of Global Entrepreneur Week, and it's just a moment to give visibility to the narrative of entrepreneurship, so that more people, because one thing that's important, maybe just one step back, but to reinforce it. I've been 10 years working with entrepreneurs, and I'm still amazed of sometimes my first conversation with some people, and they just say, thank you. I didn't realize that I was an entrepreneur.
Oh,
And I didn't have that terminology.
identity, right? Like the skill.
Identity. So to reflect on my role. And many times I felt I was not courageous enough to be an entrepreneur. I want to start something on my own because I see all this glamour celebration of the entrepreneurs, as the social entrepreneurs that has grown like crazy. And then I'm sitting still inside an organization and am I just not being courageous enough? And then when you understand your role in the system and you recognize what an important role you're doing. Because if we all jump outside and we start new things and we just leave the current institutions that we are all part of and we depend on as society to die, what is the process that we are seeing as a transition? So in essence, when we are sitting inside, we are putting ourselves with clarity in what is our role and what will be our work and the job to be done. And that allows to create your career path, your development, your leadership development with more clarity on what you want to learn, how you want to develop, what are the networks you want to be part of in order to be able to bring the biggest impact that you can from where you are sitting. So Global Entrepreneur Week has that in mind, which is an open invitation for people to come and maybe see themselves for the first time in this narrative, and also for organizations to understand how they can promote this insight. Because just to envision this, there's one piece which is the individuals that want to start new things and are sitting inside organizations. But then what is the environment of that organization? Is it fertile? Is it completely against you? So we talk a lot about the corporate immune system in the league, but it can be the organization's immune system, because a public institution can also have its own immune system. But whenever you bring a new organism, and it's like, imagine the body, and you have this new thing inside your body. What do we do with our body? We react to bacteria, to everything, we put it out. But actually, when you're starting something new in an organization, that's the natural thing that will happen. You are probably threatening a little bit the current immune system. So what we want to invite is not only individuals or a group of individuals to start new ideas, but also organizations to recognize how you can create a fertile environment for entrepreneurs, and how can you build infrastructure for entrepreneurs to come up with ideas and thrive. So we do both things in Global Entrepreneur Week. We talk to individuals and create space for discussions and learnings for individuals, and also for organizations that recognize the relevance of this. I guess sharing a little bit of what has come up in these conversations yesterday.
Yes, I would love to hear maybe a few insights of, I know that it's been 10 years of the movement also changing, so I would love to hear any insights that have come up already.
I think it's been really interesting. One discussion we had, which was the moment we are living in today compared to 10 years ago is very different in terms of social commitments from corporations, visibility of the relevance of climate change, how people are living climate change today. So a different sense of, I think, like all of these conversations that maybe 10 years ago were really on the margins are coming a little bit more mainstream. Far from mainstream. Also, there was a big discussion around we're still in a bubble in terms of, but it has advanced. And with that, more and more organizations are coming into this conversation. But the interesting discussion was, but the people that will last and the projects that actually show the potential to grow, to scale, and really have impact come from intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation, and not from the extrinsic pressure that organizations or companies or other institutions can have from regulations or from brand reputation. That's not lasting. So just to bear in mind, as you're coming into this journey, all of you, I think like what lasts, what really makes a change is what's coming from your intrinsic motivation, personally, that really you care about. And then as you are sitting in an organization, you need to combine that with the strategy of the organization and the real strategy. Not like something else that we are putting for external affairs, but actually with the real strategy, the core strategy of the organization, and how you intertwine your idea with that. Because the business case for social entrepreneurship is when you are able to connect the new ideas with the organization's strategy. And that is the core, and it's difficult. So that was a reflection we were having in Global Entrepreneur Week. And the other reflection was these different roles of entrepreneurs. And then we were like 3 archetypes of entrepreneurs.
Oh.
Archetype number 1, you are starting something from zero with a group of individuals. It can bring people from outside or inside the organization, but something that is really being born from the first time from inside. Great, and that's one way. Another way can be you see something that is amazing outside and you make the connection. So it's that idea that I was saying earlier. There's an entrepreneur, there's something out there that with the connections, with the support, you can really bring to scale. And then the third option, there is something that already was existing in that organization that you are sitting on, but you can give it a twist. You can give it a different perspective and investment. And with that, bring it to a whole new level. So as you're thinking of yourself and where you are, just be aware that the windows of opportunity for entrepreneurship can come if you are looking in the system and really seeing where there's potential for opportunities, not just from starting from scratch, but actually what's out there that we could relate with, or what's in here that, because a big part of being an entrepreneur, I would say skill number 1, connecting the dots. Connecting the dots as other people have not connected them. And then if you start trying to practice that integrative mind on seeing something that was actually being run maybe by sustainability department, and then actually I see the business side of this. And if we run it differently, this could become a business, or so think about the different twists. And that was the conversation we were having, the archetypes of entrepreneurship and the relevance of the intrinsic motivation always.
Totally. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I also really like that you were saying like the business case for social entrepreneurship is when you connect the intrinsic desire to create something from the entrepreneur and the archetypes of like the structures that the organization already has to allow that to happen. Yeah, I think.
Maybe just to share just one image, but I think just to remind you, as you're thinking of your sweet spot, as you're thinking of, this is basically the sweet spot. There are your passions and gifts. There's your capacity, like your flame, your shiny eyes. Then there is the problems that we are having in society. But also, as you're thinking of yourself inside an organization, I put here customer needs, just to start looking at that connection with the industry market you are part of. So, and then the organization's strategic objectives. So if you're able to, whatever comes to your mind as ideas, run it through this framework and see, how am I serving? Does this idea have these three in place? Because that's the sweet spot for social entrepreneurs. And then the other thing that I always like to remind us of is this. I love this phrase that came from one member from our community. But as you are behaving as an entrepreneur, you actually shift how you think of your job. So your job description doesn't define what you're going to do. You just see yourself as sitting on top of a platform, and you are working from that platform in order to generate impact. You are not working for the organization. You are not working for your job description. You're working to generate impact in the world and to do the best that you can with all your capacities. And you're sitting on the top of a platform that is the organization, and you will creatively try to connect what you can do from there. So just two visual aids that sometimes help us.
Perfect. I love that approach because it really changes your sense of agency and empowerment. Like you are working from this platform and not for. Like when you're like working for, you're kind of like giving your gifts or like giving your time, and but we're working from, it really changes the whole perspective of how can you use those resources for your own your passions in terms of like social benefit. So thank you.
Yeah, and imagine all the superpowers you have because you're sitting in this huge, because it's so interesting. Just one thing to mention as you're listening in. Sometimes I realize we don't know how powerful we are. Because you just think of, but actually sitting inside institutions already is giving you access to lots of resources and knowledge, capacities and connections. So imagine if you put that at service creatively. It's a lot of power that you have in your hands. So don't miss, no underestimation of the power. Maybe just to give one little example I always like to bring of an entrepreneur that always touched my heart, which was, she was an intern in Peru, working in a family company, big company for Peru, in the fish market. Okay, so they sell fish, basically, trucks that distribute fish in Peru. She gets in the company and she's just like hired for communications and a little bit of sustainability, which was very initial in the company. And she discovers that there is this project that goes to certain areas, very poor areas in Peru, with trucks for donation of fish. And then they do that once a month, twice a month, depending on how much fish is left. And then she was just like, but why do we need to just do this with this frequency? People in these areas need to eat fish, and it would be great for them. What if instead of donating it, we sell it? And the clear answer was like, of course not. They don't have the money, they are not used to eat fish, and the distribution would be too expensive, so there's no business case here. And she was just like, I'm not sure of that. Like maybe if we can bring the concept that we are improving the health of those populations by actually bringing a new way to eat, which has omega-3, that was one of the things that she proved they were lacking in these populations. And if we can find some joint investment from public investment, and we can create a distribution system, and we can reach them with a price that is lower, but it's just a social enterprise that we are building. Okay, she did it.
Amazing.
She created this, but not she, because she was very young and she had no idea of all the things that was needed. She just connected the dots of the people inside the company, the distribution, the people had the connections with government, but she was just connecting those dots. And 10% of the sales of that company after 5 years were coming from that line of business. So
Amazing.
that is when you connect stuff. And then she got money from Inter-American Development Bank. She got money from government. This became a campaign for improving the health. So it's just never underestimate what you can do when you're sitting inside an organization.
Perfect. I have a few questions from the audience. Thank you so much for sharing that example. I think it was like super relevant. And if it's okay, I would love to start sharing some of the questions of the audience. We have several, and it's very exciting. So here I have a question from Pedro Larraín. What are the most suitable positions or roles, or maybe areas or departments to develop as a social entrepreneur in traditional companies or organizations? And how to make C-level leaders to invest in entrepreneurs?
Great question, because it's true that there are some positions that allow for more space or windows of opportunity. So, of course, new business development, right? So any area that you can be in that is talking about new business development will naturally have space for these conversations. Probably, if it's just business, the difficulty will be making the case for social things, but you will have a lot of space to create. Same with innovation departments, great place where to be. More and more companies are investing in these areas to promote innovation. And then in general, you can see they work with open challenges or to ask for ideas from people, and you can bring challenges that are related to social innovation. So that's a good place where to be. Then sustainability, funnily enough, I think it's a good place where to be if you come in with the mind of entrepreneurship, because usually they have very little investment in terms of capacity to invest in new ideas, but a lot of freedom to create things. And so you could create something more around how to weave different areas into a certain challenge, for instance. Kind of like Fernanda, the case I was sharing in Peru. She was sitting in the sustainability area, but she was able to, with a little bit more freedom, tie all these conversations and start something from there. I think it's tougher when you're sitting in the pure sales area or pure operation area, because usually the workload is more on the operation. So you are a little bit caught in the capacity to create something new. And then how to bring that, defend the case for entrepreneurship in an organization and saying why you should invest on this. Well, we do that all the time. And I have to say, I always think of 3 pain points. One is you are losing your talent. The best talent is not staying. And companies and organizations in general, also public institutions, are concerned on getting the best talent. So you need to give space for people to create, to feel that they can bring their full selves and that can create something. They want to bring more than just execution on what you're telling them to do. So this can be a beautiful space for motivating your leaders and also getting the best productivity from them, because it's proven that the productivity increases by 5 times if you invite someone to create and not just execute. So there are studies on that. Then, second, from the side of your business and your longevity on your business, you need to invest in leaders that are capable of creating new businesses and not just executing the core. So in order to innovate at the speed that the market requires, you need to invest in programs and allow people to create. So accelerators, open challenges, all that innovation perspective. And then last but not least, from the side of social impact and environmental impact, that's a very interesting avenue today. if you look at many of the organizations, they have committed in their agendas, okay, to decarbonization, green portfolios, to really, so all of these commitments. The big questions that CEO have in their minds today and leadership committees is, how are we going to make it in time? How are we going to really make those commitments come true in our reality? So you can bring the concept that creating a space for intrapreneurs that can bring their ideas on how to live up to those commitments is a great space. So I think that's a way you can craft a narrative and sell it, hopefully, in your organization. And there are lots of cases of other organizations doing it. So benchmark, organizations love that. All of these people are doing it and you're not. So if you're interested in that for Global Entrepreneur Week, in the League of Entrepreneurs website, we will be publishing lots of case studies of how organizations are investing in entrepreneurship.
Perfect. It's public.
Yes.
The case studies. Wonderful. That's really a great resource. Thank you so much, Florencia. And here I have another question from Kiati Guatam. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. And how could social entrepreneurs align their drive to create impact and do business at the same time? And how to start?
Well, that's the path and that's the journey. I guess maybe you said Kiami, the name. What was the name?
Kiati.
Kiati. Love this. So Kiati, I think it's a great question where to start. Because I think like sometimes we have all these dreams and passions and just try to be pragmatic and realistic on where you can start in your organization. And by that I mean, of course, what I was already saying, which is the connection of what you care about with the organization's strategy. So just to bring an example, for instance, we work with a program with Reckitt, the organization that it's a health company and sells hygiene and health products. We sometimes work with them, and I like to say, there's lots of interesting things that you can do. But if you're working in an organization that basically sells packaged goods in the health and hygiene industry, probably think, what is your connection with that? Is it a specific disease? Is it like, you can of course work on the packaged goods and the circular economy of it. But if you just come with a topic that is far from what is the strategy of the organization, I mean, it's tougher to say you want to work with regeneration of landscapes. Let's say, that is my passion. Wonderful. But what is the connection with the strategy so that it really has a business case for this organization? So from all the passions that you have, filter into what makes sense in the organization that you're sitting in. Second thing is, look at what is in the strategy of the organization. Where do you see windows of opportunity? Because sometimes you can start working on something that you're not, or sometimes some of us, we don't have such a clear passion. So for us, it's more about, we want to create impact. So I like to say, start with the windows of opportunity and with the who. You know what? Something I've learned over the years is, if you start with the right people, you will get passionate about so many things. So maybe there's some area in the organization that you like this leader or you like this group of people, then get closer and try to work together on doing something. That's another way. And then, of course, if your organization has any open call for innovation, any open call, just be visible, appear, speak up, come with ideas, because people don't know you exist, maybe. So just also be aware. Maybe one important thing that I have not mentioned. To be a good entrepreneur, you have to build social capital. Okay? And that is one capital, that is not the money, but it's actually the relations that you have. So reflect on yourself. What is the social capital that you have today inside your organization and outside your organization? What do we mean by social capital? Who are people that trust you? Who are people that can mentor you? Because if you're going to start something, you'd better have some trust with some people. It's difficult to invest on someone you don't know. So look at your relationships today and start investing on the social capital inside so that you can be trustable in order to do stuff together with you. And also look at your connections outside, because that is a big capital actually, if you know people outside. So, and you can connect with good people, good entrepreneurs, good consultants. So look at your network and see and invest in creating a good network and good social capital.
Wonderful. Thank you about the social capital. I think it's like a very important thing to consider always in general in life, and definitely also like by being a social entrepreneur. I have one more question that is actually related to one that I was gonna be asking you. My question was, if you could mention some examples of new products or services that you work on as a result of social entrepreneurship that you were actually involved. And Bianca Martins de Castro from Brazil was saying, what has been the most challenging and gratifying project that you have worked on throughout your career?
Oh, well, it's funny because just to answer the last one first, the league itself has been an incredible journey for me personally. And maybe just to start from there, because it might be an inspiration also for you. Sometimes I feel we're a little bit narrow-minded in terms of always thinking of new products or new services, and we forget that in order for the change that we need to see in the world to happen, we need to create networks and communities. So just to be aware of that.
Talking about social capital.
Yeah, because no, I've noticed lots of people are like, should I build a new product in my company or should I build an accelerator program so that lots of people can participate with a challenge? So instead of convincing my leadership on my idea, should I convince them on having some type of infrastructure for lots of employees in this organization to bring ideas and to create a network for that? And that is incredible as well. So you're being an incredible entrepreneur if you're doing that. So one thing is to think on one specific thing. Another thing is to catalyze the infrastructure for many others to be able to bring their ideas to life. And that has been pretty much what we have done with the League, which is less about working on one specific project, but rather creating the container and infrastructure to support many people that are working in different products and services and ideas. So that's one thing to say. And why it has been so gratifying? Because you learn to really create containers and support the journey, and not just measure your impact based on one product that scales. Now, thinking into some specific products and services that I have worked with closely and seen the process, and it has been gratifying. I'm going to share two that are very different. One of them, actually Brazil, and it was with Coca-Cola, and it has been such an interesting journey because it started looking into how to work with young teenagers in Brazil and give them a chance for more employment. And it had to do with capacity building and also a talent bank that then could be channel to all of the partners of Coca-Cola. Imagine all the supermarkets, all the distribution channels that they have. So, funnily, it started as a very much branded project inside the shared value area inside the business. And then as it moved on, and I was part of that journey and had loved to see it evolve, it was, we can't just brand it, we can't just own it, and it needs to be run. So they started spinning it out into the institute, Coca-Cola Institute, what actually became quite big. And they started operating it themselves for a while. And then they realized that they had to bring other investors and other organizations to own it. And then after having reached over 200,000 young people, which is already a big scale, they were actually considered the second program in Brazil as big, but now they're putting the target to reach over 2 million young people, bringing lots of organizations together to co-invest. So I think this is important as you build the process. We cannot create big change just owning programs inside organizations. So whatever you create from the scratch and the start is being created with the potential to bring other organizations as co-investors, co-founders is fundamental. If not, it's horrible to envision all these companies having big programs, but not looking into the whole. And then I'm going to give this other example, which is actually coming from many organizations wanting to work with diversity and inclusion. And rather than working in each of them having a program, recognizing the co-investment in a program in Brazil as well called Mover. That is but it's very interesting, the process, because it was the realization that many of the organizations wanted to advance this agenda, and they were having a very hard time to defend this internally. So actually creating a coalition of 40 companies to work on this, that was actually pushed by some entrepreneurs in some of those corporations, allows now for a long-term investment of 10 years into this agenda. So what do you manage to do with that, which is very important? When you bring external investment, it doesn't allow for the changes in leadership inside your organization to kill programs or to kill initiatives. So you guarantee more of a long-term living for those initiatives with a longer term commitment. So hope those cases, I don't know, as you can see, I'm very passionate about long-term and also coalitions, and less about just new things, but still amazing things have been done inside with just like new products. So just one other idea, like new products that you can bring into the portfolio. They're super valuable as well, just not to leave us with the idea that all has to be coalitions. But yeah, that excites me personally.
No, I love it. I love that you're already like bringing the approach of co-creation, basically, like working together with other partners and investors, and also like public organizations, I imagine. So yeah, and actually we're going to be talking focused on co-creation with different collaborators on modules 4 and 5 of the course. So you are already like bringing in those elements. And time has passed by so fast. I did not realize it's 10:55 already. So we only have 5 minutes left for this conversation. And I would love to hear a couple of things from you before we close. And basically, I just want to hear from you what keeps you motivated to do the work that you do, because I always see you so passionate about everything. So I would just like to hear, what is your motivation?
Well, I think my motivation personally is because I think, first of all, I'm working from my passion. So that's why I think it's so important, the intrinsic motivation. I suffered working in large organizations, and I would love to see a world where organizations are spaces where people bring their full potential and full humanity. And yesterday I was talking with Gifford Pinchot in one of the sessions. He coined the term intrapreneurship in 1975, the first article written about intrapreneurship. And he said, I had become bankrupt in my company and I was looking for a job. But then I just wrote, together with my wife, that my dream job would be a job where I can come and create and can just be part of a group of people that are creating, in terms of creating something good for the world. And I think we need to recreate our organizations. Yeah. We can have much better organizations that bring the best of us together. So I guess I envision that because I lived it in my own, and then now I live my passion and my flexibility and creating stuff with people around, with the league inside my organization that we created. And I invite all of us to create a space that we can be fully motivated, fully ourselves. But it doesn't have to be about creating your organization, and that is fooling ourselves. It's about creating our jobs and our way of interacting. So yeah, I don't know, I guess I'm motivated with just seeing that happen. And if this can be helpful as a narrative, wonderful. It's just like, welcome, let's all just be happier and more fulfilled, because I don't believe in just creating social impact and sacrificing ourselves. I don't think that's the way. I think it's fulfilling ourselves, creating the best impact for everyone. And thank you for this opportunity.
And thank you. Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that last point, because I think it's really relevant. Like we should not be sacrificing ourselves. We should totally be in that sweet spot in between, like being able to serve and at the same time be able to feel fulfilled and feeling fulfilled basically for what we're doing and just not feeling sacrificed. So yeah, we're just 2 more minutes. One parting advice for the social entrepreneurs and all the people that are watching us live right now.
Start doing.
Okay. Yeah.
It's only doing that you learn.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter the perfect idea. Who cares? It's the exercise of doing it and learning and sharing and creating. So don't fall in love with your idea. Just do what is there and start trying. That is the best. That is where you're going to learn. And yeah, just, I think just remember how powerful you are all the time. Don't underestimate yourselves. And yes, and thank you for listening to me. And I hope something is useful for you. And I will send for you the links. You are all invited to the meetups. They are open. So there are 15 meetups. I will send you the links. But if you just Google Global Entrepreneur Week, you can just get access there and it's all published. It's online.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Florencia. It's always such a pleasure to have this conversation with you and have you here being part of like the live webinar. Really very, very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, and for everybody that are watching us live, I just want to remind you that to please scroll down and click yes to the survey that you're watching live so you can receive the extra points. And also, please don't forget to complete your profile so that we can get to know you and just be able to make the connections. And we will see you next week on October 25th for our next live webinar with Dr. Sarah Said Kuram to discuss entrepreneurial challenges and opportunities. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to host this interview with Florencia. Thank you. Bye-bye.